Joining me now is Missouri Congressman and Chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, Jason Smith. Mr. Chairman, it's always a pleasure. Thanks so much for being here.
It's great to be with you, Maria.
Well, you all have a lot on your plate, and your leadership is critical right now. First, let's talk about tomorrow and the vote. Do you feel like you have the votes to keep the government funded and open past Friday?
I do, but Maria, I'm sure it will only be with Republican votes. Think about this, though, Maria. There's almost 20 members of the Republican conference that has never voted for a CR in the history of their service in government. And what we're about to pull off, where all Republicans will stand unified to pass this because the Democrats are wanting a shutdown, I think will be a great accomplishment of the House Republicans.
All right. Well, the Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office is finding that the House's budget resolution would need to reduce Medicaid in order to reach its spending goal. President Trump talked to me about his agenda yesterday. Here's what he said. Watch.
But we're doing a series of incentives, tax incentives and other things. The tax bill, I think, is going to be very important. The Democrats will fight us all the way.
You say you're going to balance the budget. Yeah, you can't balance the budget just by DOGE cuts,
We're
right?
going to have growth like you've never seen before.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, you said that.
We're going to have growth. I'm not going to touch Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. No, we're going to get fraud out of there.
So, Chairman, your reaction?
You know, the president's been clear all along, Maria, that we're not going to cut Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid. But what we will look at is fraud and inefficiencies with those different areas. I would challenge what CBO and the House Democrats have been pushing, that these would be Medicaid cuts. The Energy and Commerce Committee's jurisdiction is much larger than just Medicaid. For example, Commerce, Spectrum, you could go line by line. And think about this, Maria, just requiring states to do repeat verification for people who are on Medicaid would save almost $200 billion. That's not cutting anyone off. That's just making sure that people that should be on the program are on the program. And also, think about this, eliminating the ridiculous nursing home mandate that the unions pushed through in the Biden administration would save $25 billion. There's a lot of easy savings that Congress must do.
Mr. Chairman, I understand what you're saying, but we just had Maya McGuinness on, and you know Maya from the president of the Committee for a Responsible Budget, and she's just doing the math, and she says the spending cuts called for by the House budget are small. Just $2 trillion over their budget period, while government spending will be $86 trillion over that same period. She says that's really not the kind of savings you want. So how are you going to get the kind of savings you want and you need, Congressman?
You know, savings is savings. And what I would argue with her, Maria, is in the history of government, the most savings or cuts that you have ever seen pass Congress is $400 billion over 10 years. If we can cut $1.5 to $2 trillion, that will be a huge accomplishment. Do we need to cut more? Absolutely, but it's definitely a great step in the right direction. But to say that this is not good enough, look at history. The most that has ever been passed in cuts was $400 billion. This would be 5 times that amount.
Well, I mean, I know the president is talking about growth, and I think it's a good idea. I mean, I agree that you really need growth to be the priority. Let that be the North Star, and that's how you move forward. But there's no way growth can actually cut into the spending and cut into $36 trillion in debt. So what are the other ideas?
Well, the continuing resolution that we're pushing tomorrow will keep spending at a level hand. It actually reduces expected spending. So you have to continue to look at mandatory spending, but discretionary spending as well. We have a spending problem. If you just look at the last 25 years on average, spending to GDP was roughly 20%. Over the last 5 years, spending towards GDP was 26%. That is where the problem is. The influx of spending over the last 5 years have been absolutely terrible. We can cut that back.
Well, there's also lots of waste, fraud, and abuse, and I wonder how much waste, fraud, and abuse is actually apparent at the 2 largest programs. That's Medicare and Medicaid. I'm not, suggesting you cut into the muscle here because our people, American citizens, rely on Medicare and Medicaid. But I'm wondering if you believe that there is also fraud and abuse there as well, because DOGE has exposed so much wasteful spending. Also, from this last week, this Inter-American Foundation, the foreign aid agency, which once had a $60 million budget, they spent more than $500,000 on avocado marketing in Honduras, nearly $800,000 on cacao farming in Peru, more than $300,000 on artisanal weaving in Mexico. Cuts that have dwindled the agency's employee count to just one. DOGE found more than $300 million in pandemic-era loans that were handed out to children ages 11 and younger. So we know that when you start digging, you're going to find it. I'm wondering if you started digging into Medicare and Medicaid to see if it's all muscle or if there's fat around the muscle there as well, Mr. Chairman.
I welcome DOGE looking at Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, the IRS. They need to be audited. They need to look at their efficiencies, and they need to analyze any kind of fraud within the programs. If people say that there's not fraud in it, I would look at just CBO and CBO scores saying medical overpayments within just Medicare and Medicaid. This happens. These are efficiencies that needs to be rectified. And I think DOGE is leading the effort in that, and I welcome it. And that's how we're going to look at efficiencies in government.
So you brought up a good point on the IRS, because I like to remember that the IRS is overseen and watched by your committee. But I want to get your take, Chairman, on what you would expect this tax season. Do you have any estimation in terms of the tax revenue, in terms of this IRS season? Do you have anything to tell our viewers about upcoming tax day, April 15th?
I think that our revenues are going to be right and consistent of where they have been. But one thing to watch, Maria, is that whenever there's a federal disaster or something as horrible as the California fires, that allows individuals to delay when they file their taxes. And that could have a big impact in the revenues that come within the country by April 15th.
That's a great point. Mr. Chairman, I know you've got a lot that you're doing, and we're watching your work, and we so appreciate your time this morning, sir. Thank you.
Great to be with Maria.